I've put some structures and practices in place that really keep me grounded in like a full rounded life. So I don't ever feel like music is it, and if that falls through, then, I'm a worthless human and nothing else is going to move forward in my life. But that took a long time to learn to get to that.
Welcome to the Female Entrepreneur Musician Podcast with Bree Noble. Bree is a musician, entrepreneur, speaker, and founder of Women of Substance Music Radio and Podcast. Bree's interviews with successful female musicians and industry pros are both inspirational and informational. She also answers your questions about the music business. Bree is on a mission to help you create great music, connect with your fans, and grow your business, and to truly become a female entrepreneur musician.
Hey, this is Bree Noble, and you are tuned in to the Female Entrepreneur Musician Podcast, where we talk about making great music, connecting with your audience, and growing your business. Now, today's guest is Cassandra Kubinski, and if you went to the Profitable Musicians Summit back in May, she was one of our guests talking about crowdfunding. She was introduced to me by Ariel Hyatt as giving some impressions on the artist side of crowdfunding and her experience with that. And I just loved her story so much and wanted to help promote her on this show because she's so focused on helping women in music. She is the global co-chair of membership for Women in Music, and she's actually the reason that I joined the organization. On top of her crowdfunding experience, she's got some amazing stories about her artist career and a great answer to my question that I always ask artists about a time that they wanted to give up on music and how they pushed through. I think you're going to really love her answer to this question, and maybe you'll identify with it yourself. So I'll tell you a little bit about Cassandra Kubinski in a minute, but first of all, here's some information on our sponsor for this show. This episode of the Female Entrepreneur Musician is brought to you in part by Muddy Paw PR. Through their highly personalized public relations campaigns for DIY artists, they've secured placements on Alternative Press, Substream, New Noise, and more, with their artists going on to play festivals like Warped Tour, So What, and gain licensing deals and regular rotation in stores like Starbucks and Hollister. Find out more at muddypawpr.com. Here's a little information about Cassandra Kubinski. Singer-songwriter Cassandra Kubinski has released 6 albums, including the Billboard Heatseeker charting EPs Holiday Magic and Onward. In her globe-trotting career, she's recorded and/or performed alongside the Goo Goo Dolls, 10,000 Maniacs, Chris Botti, Lady Gaga, and Lana Del Rey, has had dozens of sync placements on TV shows, and served as band leader and music director for the Emmy-nominated live streaming show Never Settle Show. She is also the global co-chair of membership for Women in Music. Here is my interview with Cassandra Kubinski. So that's a little bit about Cassandra Kubinski. So Cassandra, is there anything that's not in the little bio that I read for you that's maybe a little more personal, a little more unique about you that you think our listeners should know?
Personal and unique. Well, I think a little quick background. I'm from Northern Connecticut, and I've been living in the New York area for about 15 years. I also, besides music, I really, really love yoga and got certified as a yoga instructor back in 2010. So I have like a really regular practice of yoga, which I use very much to kind of ground me and keep me in like, my passion and in like my own energy for my music career. So that's a little something extra.
No, I think that's good. I think we often need that thing that keeps us grounded when we're musicians, because we can kind of be all over the place, right?
Definitely. Yeah, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get started in music?
Well, I started out in musical theater, actually. So when I was a kid, I was just like singing all the time. And my mom wanted to find a place for me to sing outside of the house so that she wouldn't have to listen to me sing in the house so much. And she found this community theater. And she had my sister and I audition for a community theater production of Annie, the show Annie. So we ended up doing this show and then doing like bunches of other shows in the general northern Connecticut, eastern Massachusetts area. And that led weirdly and serendipitously into me playing the role of Annie at a professional theater called the Goodspeed Opera House when I was 12 and 13. So that was my first professional job, was actually singing in a theater show.
Wow, that's awesome. I just saw Annie actually a few weeks ago in our little tiny little, Golden Chain theater. But the girl who played Annie was amazing. And it just made me think like, wow, I may be talking to her someday in 20,
right?
So you never know.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's true.
So at this point, do you consider yourself a full-time musician, and are you making most of your money from music, or are there kind of some side hustles that you have, or even maybe related to music side hustles?
So I do make my full living in entertainment. It's not all music driven. Some of it is in voiceover, which is an area that I got into about 5 or 6 years ago really heavily. So I've been working as a union voiceover actor since then. And that's really kind of crisscrossed and merged in with my music career. And the people I've met in music have sometimes ended up being helpful for things in voiceover, and people I've met in studios and producers from the voiceover world sometimes end up offering opportunities in music. So it's kind of been like a nice synergistic thing. And I still think of it as a side hustle, but it's at this moment, I don't know. I mean, I spend most of my time pursuing and working on music, but voiceover does bring in some of the money.
No, I love that this is true because, as you know, I had you on the Profitable Musician Summit talking about crowdfunding, but we had someone talking about voiceover and being a professional voiceover artist. And I felt like there was so much synergy in that for musicians because we work hard on our voice and, really producing it well and having the kind of equipment you could even do that from home. And so I love hearing that you are actually kind of doing that as a part of your whole career. And I do think it's something that, it's not easy to get into. I think you got to have connections and you got to work hard at it, but it's a great add-on or combination that you can put as a musician. And a lot of the same people, like you said, like there's some networking that's involved with that and, how you can kind of utilize your contacts in both of the areas to work together. So I love that you said that. And I know you've been in some, pretty well-known commercials, which I think is awesome. Everyone should look her up and see what she's been in. But we have a lot of struggling artists listening to this show that are maybe just starting out or in the early years of their career. And you've been doing this for a while. Is there a time that you can tell them about that you just felt like this isn't working? I'm frustrated. I'm hitting a wall. Maybe I should give up. And what allowed you to push through that and continue? And, maybe what they can learn from your experiences there.
Yeah, sure. I feel like when you ask that question, I think, wow, like if I could just stack up all the times that I wanted to quit,
Yeah, I get some people answering that like, yeah, every day I go through that.
Right. The cycle. I haven't lately, I think because I've put some structures and practices in place that really keep me grounded in like a full rounded life. So I don't ever feel like music is it, and if that falls through, then, I'm a worthless human and nothing else is going to move forward in my life. But that took a long time to learn to get to that place. So let's see, a time when I wanted to quit. Oh, you know what? Okay. This is the time. So in 2008, I was working with a manager, like a pretty good manager. And we had labels coming out to my shows in New York, and we were working on getting me signed and, going down the sort of traditional path of get signed, form a team, really work on, putting out a single and making it a hit and, rising to that sort of like fame status. And I was in a really very difficult place in my personal life and breaking up with the person who up until that time had been the love of my life. And I was just feeling very young and not ready to commit to that longer term relationship. So it was like a really difficult personal time. Then some issues arose with the manager. And so all this is happening like while while I'm experiencing some of the greatest movement in my career, and like having finally like label people are coming out and coming to the shows and, you know, looking at me as an artist, but my kind of personal life was sort of falling apart. So the upshot of that was all that in the summer, I kind of just quit. Like I really sort of just dropped out of it all. Like I had broken up with the boyfriend. I was like just crushed from that. And the manager and I dissolved our relationship, and that was the right thing to do, but felt like a failure, you know, and just felt like it really sucked. And I don't remember thinking about music in that time as like I didn't feel so much sad that it seemed like it wasn't going to move forward, so much as I was like, I just literally don't know what to do with myself. Like, what would I do going forward? So I just went home. I went back to Connecticut and I hung out in my parents' house. And I remember distinctly sitting on the back porch on some lovely summer day and thinking, you know what? I'm not going to make it up. Like, I'm not going to decide what I'm doing next. I'm going to, let go and let God, as they say. And I'm just going to sit here and listen. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to listen for like, what is the move? And it's remarkable when you are actually willing to open yourself to internal knowing. I call it universal or spiritual guidance. I think just generally, you know, that bigger consciousness that we're all tapped into if we choose to be. And it was very quick, like in that session of sitting out on the back porch, I got this message that was like, well, all right, whip out a piece of paper and on one side of it, write down the things that you have done in your career so far that have been the most fun. And then in the next column, write down the things that have made you the most money and see where they intersect and go with that. And that's pretty much what I did, which is how I sort of ended up transitioning into working in the jingle and voiceover world, or at least adding that to the picture. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that was really, and there, you know, there's certainly the story continued from there, but in that very moment, that was really like, I remember being like, I actually don't care if I continue in music. Oh my gosh. And I forgot a whole other piece of that story was that also at that time, like in that time period was the time when Billy Joel found my music online and reached out to me, and I met him, and he was not in a great place personally himself after a divorce, and his dog was sick, and like he wasn't in a really great place. So it was just a very weird mind trip to meet like basically, you know, one of my musical idols and heroes of songwriting, and have him kind of be like, you know, I like what you do, but, you know, I can't really help you, man. Like, I don't know anybody. You know, it was such a weird thing, and very, you know, it just added insult to injury. I was like, okay, this is all crashing, but like, you know, it can't get better than your greatest influence finding you online and reaching out to you to tell you that he likes your music. But it can't get worse than him saying, you know, sorry, kid, can't do anything for you. You know? So, yeah.
I love that. But it is that confirmation that like what you're creating in the world of music is good and it's worth continuing when someone like Billy Joel reaches out to you.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely the lesson that I learned from all of that was just that, you know, none of it ever necessarily looks the way you think it's going to look like. And I think that I've resisted that lesson. I've really resisted that lesson, you know, that there's like, just because you get to work with your hero doesn't mean it's going to be like a sublime experience. And just because your career doesn't develop the way you hoped it would, doesn't mean it's not going to be fabulous and wonderful and amazing if you're actually willing to back off and listen to like what the right moves are for you, instead of like continuing to pound on like what you think you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, I think that's so important. And sometimes we do that in relationships. You know, we have this idea of the perfect wedding or the perfect courtship or whatever. And when it doesn't work out like that, then we think, oh, maybe this isn't the right person because it's not what I had in my mind already, right. You know, and we like screw ourselves up that way. So that's a really good point. So I was just wondering, like when you did that piece of paper, which I thought was really great, like, okay, the things that are the most fun, the things that make you money, what were the things that came up during that were related to your songwriting and singer-songwriter career that you found from that exercise, besides the voiceover thing, which ended up being kind of like a side hustle that maybe kept you in the game? Like, what were the singer-songwriter related things?
I'm not even really sure. Like and I don't even know if there were things on there, because I knew I loved writing, but so far writing hadn't made me a lot of money. And I knew that I loved performing under certain circumstances, but I also really hated performing under certain circumstances too. Those circumstances being things like, wow, I just drove all the way out to Rhode Island to play in this ridiculous dive bar that my music absolutely won't go over well. And it's like, I am so in the wrong place. Why did they book me? And why did I say yes? As far as singer-songwriter things, I think there wasn't too much on that list at the time, which is why it didn't break my heart to take a minute and kind of like pursue a different direction.
It gave you the sign that like, obviously I need to pivot because what I'm doing now is just going to burn me out and frustrate me.
Right.
And so you probably don't play those dive bars anymore.
No, I absolutely don't. You're totally right. And that is like, I think sometimes, at least for me, the people pleaser and the opportunist in us wants to say yes to everything. I mean, we just want to say, what, you want me to come play on your street corner? Oh my God, that might be great exposure. And like, so yeah, I have for sure over time slowly kind of like tightened in, focus in, and really place a huge priority on the projects I'm actually excited to work on, the people I'm actually excited to work with, and, the potential results that I think about, like what would my life be like if that actually happened. And I think, wow, like that would really be something, instead of like, well, okay, that would be more of the same.
Yeah. And that's a good point that you just said, the people that you want to work with, because I see you as a connector, a collaborator, someone that has done a lot through just networking with the people that you work with. So, how has the networking and deciding the right kind of people that you're going to work with really, propelled your career over the last 10 years?
Well, a lot of that has also been intuition for sure. So, meeting people, and it's interesting. And I certainly wish that I could say that I have like this code all cracked and I can deliver you guys the magic bullet here. But I have to say that in collaboration, for me, the beacon has been ease. Like when I meet somebody or when I speak with someone for the first time, and there's kind of like just an easy rapport right off the bat, 9 times out of 10, that relationship ends up being really cool and fun and productive and usually profitable. Whereas when I've chosen to work with people and or hire people who totally make sense on paper, and I interviewed them multiple times and I just like can't find anything wrong with it, but my gut isn't 100% in and I hire them anyway, I usually end up at least mildly disappointed, So, and that goes for everything from PR to consultant management. There's all kinds of people out there trying to be like hybrid artist services people now, which I have very mixed feelings about. But yeah, so to me, it's always worked out best when I go with what lights me up, and more, especially this year, I've placed this huge emphasis on desire. Like the feeling of desire is what is leading me, and the feeling, the little magical, fun, sparkly feeling you get when you're like, ooh, I'm excited about that. I followed that, and so far, knock on wood, like it is really working out. So
no, I'm totally on board with that. And that's how I feel about anyone I collaborate with as well on any kind of project. Like I have to look forward to our meetings and not dread them. And
right.
be very happy to be associated with them online, and not like, oh, please don't tell people about the fact that I'm involved with this project.
Right. Totally.
So, yeah, it's really, I love that ease feeling. I think of it as like feeling light versus heavy.
Yes, totally. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I know that you've done a lot of projects over the last few years, and you've incorporated some really good PR campaigns. You've worked with some people like my friend Ariel Hyatt, who's amazing. Have you done any of the PR yourself? Or have you always just tried to pick people like Ariel that, are just fantastic at what they do?
We have done most of it ourselves. And while we have hired PR companies, at this time, I think I've hired and or worked with pro bono on this one autism song called Not So Different. We had somebody who actually came on and did it mostly pro bono. Probably between like 3 and 4 actual, like, we are hiring you to be a publicist and do the publicity for this project, and or radio promoters. We've just hired my first radio promoter last fall. I would say for me, and this is only just what it's been so far, but for me so far, doing it myself or doing it ourselves with my small team has been more effective, because when we think of something really cool and fun, we just pursue it. So we have less of like a standard operating procedure, which I think just totally gets in the way of results for many companies, where they're like, well, it just doesn't work like that. Like, you can't just call that person. Like, you can't just show up. So for example, I'll give you a quick example. This is not exactly a PR example, but it'll make the point. So the other night, we have this thing that we're developing with Guitar Center around women in music and conversations with top women in music. And it's a series that I would like to produce and host for Guitar Center's online presence. And I have decided there are like a few people that I'm really interested in talking to, because I personally, as an artist, am interested in talking to them. And I kind of assume, perhaps selfishly, that if I'm interested, probably a bunch of other people are interested. And one of those people is the divine Sarah Bareilles. And so I'm thinking, like, seriously, like, how am I going to get to Sarah Bareilles? You know, like, don't know her. I don't know her management. I know she is signed by Paradigm, and Paradigm is my agent for voiceover, but the music and voiceover departments are really different. Anyway, my friend and co-producer, Tony, reaches out to me a couple of weeks ago and says, hey, she's going to be here in New York doing a Screen Actors Guild conversation after a screening of Jesus Christ Superstar. We need to go to this thing, which we could sign up and go to for free as Screen Actors Guild members. And he's like, we got to go because you need to talk to her about this. So I say yes. And I think to myself, you know, the doubting voice in my head is like, please, like, yeah, okay. I'm just going to like go to this thing and then walk up to her and talk to her. Because, you know, she has all the time in the world for, you know, me and the 200 other people in the room. So I'm thinking all of this, you know, negative, whatever. And this was like a couple nights ago. And the afternoon of, I just decided, I was like, is that really me? Like, am I really going to I'm really going to just keep battering myself in the situation with this negative talk about how it's not going to work out? And I was like, no, actually, I'm not. I'm going to decide that she's going to say yes. That's it. She's going to say yes. And once I had decided that she was going to say yes, I realized that I needed to figure out what I'd actually say to her if I did get some time. So I literally set a timer for 2 minutes, which was probably kind of generous, but like, I set this timer and I made myself figure out like a very clear, calm, compelling pitch that I would make if I had this very short amount of time to speak with her. We go to the event, we get out of the event, we go to the stage door and wait there. She comes out and I totally had this conversation with her. And like, she passed me off to her manager who was there, got the manager's phone number, email in my phone. They're like, we're interested. It's just totally a matter of time. Like, you know, if we can do this when she's around. So like, how insane is that? That, you know, so I guess the point is that whether it's a press agent or a radio promoter, I think a lot of artists think that like they need that person, but really the reason you want a press agent or the reason you want a radio promoter is because you want to be on certain radio stations and you want to be in certain press outlets. And like, you can, if you're willing to put in the time and energy to formulate a compelling and professional approach, like, you can approach those outlets yourself. You don't have to go through a third party.
Yeah, you totally can. And you have to have the like nerves of steel to go back to them 3 or 4 times. And, you know, I admit, like, I've done this to PR agents before. I've like just had not had enough time to respond to them. And they've had to come back to me 4 and 5 times to get somebody on my show. And like, I'm not like, I think that's terrible that I did that. But sometimes, you know, things just happen. Like, I'm too busy and that's not number one on my plate. And as artists, you have to be okay with like, I'm not irritating this person. They're just busy. You know, because I think PR agents, they're used to that. So they do it. And I think artists are scared to do that. Would you agree?
I would. And I think, I mean, I can say it with absolute, deep personal experience with it because, for me, what I identified was that, partially due to many, many, many prior rejections, I walk into these situations with so many layers of guard up. And the biggest guard that I think is hard for us to see sometimes is that we've already decided that they're going to say no so that we can be right. Because as long as they say no, then we can just prove that we're right. That's how it goes. The business sucks and it's just everybody says no. And it really is like just so hard. And isn't it hard to be an artist? And it's like, yeah, okay. So how are you going to handle your shit when they say yes? Like, I think that is actually what we're scared of. And, this is not new news that we're scared of success, but it really like got super real for me the other day when I was like, oh, I'm just afraid that she's going to say yes. And I'm actually going to have to do what I say I want to do. Like, and then I'm going to have to do it well. And I'm going to have to do it professionally. And she's going to like show up and I'm going to have a conversation with her and interview this human who I think is so remarkable. Like that's actually going to happen now, most likely. And I have to do it. I'm a little scared. I'm not going to lie.
Oh no, that's great. And I think that's really helpful for people listening that you have to be ready for the chance that they will say yes. And I think we do we totally self-sabotage because it's just more comfortable to be in like the us versus them mode of like you said, the business sucks. We're musicians, we're peons, we have to spend way too much money on PR agents and they have all the connections, just these ideas that right. So I love that. So I got to ask you, since you mentioned the radio promoter, you hired your first radio promoter in the fall, and I'm assuming to promote your Christmas album.
Yes.
And it did quite well, like chart-wise. So do you feel like that was a worthwhile investment? Would you do it again? Do you recommend that? And like, where do you think artists should be before they do something like that?
Sure. So the holiday record, Holiday Magic, we charted mostly via our pre-sales, which were done through Pledge Music. So actually, while the radio promotion campaign theoretically went quite well, we had reports from this radio promoter that we had gotten on a lot of different stations. At the end of the day, we were not able to procure spin reports that actually backed that up. So I wouldn't recommend this particular radio promoter that we worked with purely because he just couldn't give us any hard evidence that what he was saying.
That is frustrating.
Yeah. So, I mean, and look, I'm not going to say that he was lying. I actually don't think he was. I just think that like when you get paid to produce results and then you cannot actually prove that it happened, like you're saying you got played on this station and this station and this station, but like you can't pull up anything that shows when those spins happened.
Shouldn't you theoretically be able to see that in your PRO statements eventually?
Absolutely, of course, but I mean, I'm probably not, if it even shows up, like if, for instance, these spins were logged, if they were picked up by BDS or whoever's picking things up these days, I'm not going to see that until fall.
Right.
I won't see that until later anyway. So, I'd love to be pleasantly surprised, but it was another example of a time when we really did our research. We really did our homework. We interviewed this person really hard. And I don't think we made a mistake in hiring per se, but exactly what you said. It's super frustrating that at the end of the day, I can't say, here's what we did and here's what it yielded. All I can say is like, here's what we did and here's what he says it yielded.
It's interesting because I get so many artists that say like, oh, Facebook ads, they're a waste of money and, that kind of thing. But I'm a proponent of them because you know exactly what you're getting. Like you can see, okay, these people engaged. These people actually went to my website. Like you see real clicks and you know exactly how much those cost you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I'm a fan of ads like that because, and there aren't many other platforms where, PR is the same way. Like it's nebulous whether you actually got your money's worth out of that thing or not. And if you got the press, did that really bring people to your website and have them buy your music? So Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard thing to figure out what you should spend your money on as an artist, for sure.
Definitely.
So let's talk about crowdfunding, because I obviously interviewed you for the Profitable Musician Summit because of your multiple crowdfunding experiences. So I'd love to know just kind of like, what are your 3 biggest tips / they could be tips or they could be like biggest don'ts that you would tell artists about your crowdfunding experience overall?
Sure. One of the biggest tips I have is make your crowdfund about exclusive access. So what I mean by that is people who contribute to you should be getting something that you actually really cannot get anywhere else. So, you shouldn't be offering that lunch date with you to like anybody who will pay. You should only be offering it to like people that are actually going to pay the money into your crowdfund to get it. Also, as far as music or videos or whatever it is that you're crowdfunding, you want to keep the focus on exclusive access to that process. Like people really want to know what it takes to make this stuff, what it's like to be in the process of making it, getting that behind the scenes look at studios, collaboration, on set time. So you want to give them that. And that takes actually quite a bit of planning to make sure that you're capturing enough content that you can give them. So that's kind of the first tip, I'd say. One of my biggest don'ts, and I say this, for myself as well as anybody else, is just don't think that posting 1,000 times on social media or like sending out 100 email blasts is going to be what gets you the crowdfunding success. I mean, I guess if you already have a much higher number of fans, so your ratio can be much smaller. So, let's say you have 100,000 fans and only 1% of them, 1,000 people give you some money, you're probably going to end up with, at least like some money.
At least $1,000, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Right. Like you're going to end up with something that's maybe more respectable. But like, so if you're starting out or if you're kind of a mid-level artist, I think, the don't is don't expect social media to do the work for you. And the do is do expect that when you offer people personally the opportunity to become involved in this project and to support you in creating and in achieving your creations, that people will respond very favorably. So rather than being afraid to reach out personally and being resistant to picking up the phone, look at it as like if you were calling somebody to invite them to like the coolest party that you've ever thrown, you'd be calling them figuring they're going to be excited, like figuring that they're going to say yes, because you're sure that you're offering a really cool opportunity. Like that's what you want to be doing with your crowdfund, is just knowing that you're offering a really cool opportunity here. So some people may say yes, some people may say no, but really, get into that mindset of feeling like, yeah, I'm really offering something cool here, and people are going to say yes. They're going to be excited. I guess my last tip would be to plan it in advance, because once you get started with the process of the crowdfund, it can quickly become overwhelming to manage everything you feel you need to manage, especially when you feel like the deadline is closing in. So for this, I recommend Ariel Hyatt's book, Crowdstart, which is a phenomenal step-by-step guide that will take you through everything you need to do to plan a crowdfund starting, 6 to 8 weeks before it even launches. And it's really gold. So we've used it. We used it for Holiday Magic, and I think it's the best thing I've read as far as preparing for crowdfunding.
Yeah, I'll completely agree with you on that one for sure. So I know we talked that you have a training with women in music right after we did this interview. So right. I did want to ask you, like, what's your involvement with women in music, and what do you think needs to change in the music industry for women still in 2019?
So I am the global co-chair of membership for Women in Music. So that means that I interface with all of our members and potential members for Women in Music, which is a national and now international nonprofit that exists to advance and serve women in the music industry. And we do that with a combination of events and on-site programming in most of our major cities, including New York, LA, Nashville, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, and some internationally. And also online networking and trainings for our members. So what do I think needs to change in the industry for women? We just had a panel on this here in New York. And the things that came up the most, or that stood out the most to me, were some of them are externally driven. Like, for instance, of course, it's so frustrating and insane to see us making 25% less than men on the dollar, like what the heck. But more than that, I think what needs to shift is a sense of internal self-worth and a sense of collective, collaborative empowerment among women. So, dropping the competitive stuff and looking at each other as our greatest allies. That's what really stood out to me, was that there were so many people in the room who reported feeling like they didn't know how to value themselves, as far as like when somebody says, how much do you expect to make in this position? And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I would figure that out. So yeah, to me, that's and especially with the Me Too stuff, having been through some of that myself, I know now on the other side of it, that the thing that ended up making the difference for me was shifting into a space where I valued myself so much and enough that I didn't need the attention or the promises of some guy to validate my talent. And it really, like, that was the big shift for me, was to be like, oh, well, now nobody is even going to come into my space trying to sexually harass me to, tell me that they're going to help my career. And, if only I, do this whatever intimate thing with them, like, it's just not going to happen for me, because I am no longer open for business, I could just. But that was an internal shift. That was not, the guys are not going to change. Like, that was me who had to change.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you're talking about, banding together and not being competitive with each other. And I've seen a lot of stuff lately come through on my Google alerts of women in music, and this whole, like, not trying to compete with each other and helping each other, which I think is really important. Obviously what Women in Music is about, and obviously what you're about with the initiatives that you're doing and what I'm doing. So I really love all of that you're doing. So I want to give you a chance to tell us real quick about your new EP and any new initiatives that you have associated with that.
Sure. So we have an EP out called Onward, and we just put out a music video called You Never Told Me. And this song, You Never Told Me, is really about moving beyond the boundaries that we've placed on ourselves, mostly based on what we learned early in life. So basically, like, breaking our own rules, breaking these rules that we've been living by that maybe aren't serving us. So this song led to creating what we're calling #BreakYourBoundaries, which is a conversation, really. And so the event I just mentioned from Women in Music was a Break Your Boundaries event. And so we're now going out and creating these conversations with women around, where are we facing challenges and boundaries? Where have we faced boundaries? How have we broken through them? And where do we still have to go? The question you just asked, like, what is still there for us to break through? So it's just something that I'm really interested in as a woman and as an artist, and as someone in the music industry. And this is part of this initiative that we're working on with Guitar Center and with multiple other colleges and other organizations. So people can definitely stay tuned for, more Break Your Boundaries events. And if you want to join the conversation, most certainly please connect with me. I'm sort of, like the figurehead of it, but we're expanding it to work with many organizations. So that's really what's up with Onward and with You Never Told Me and Break Your Boundaries.
Now, can they follow the hashtag Break Your Boundaries, and then would they see stuff related to that?
Yeah. I mean, if you go on Twitter and put in hashtag Break Your Boundaries, you will probably see some tweets from our last Women in Music event. There's no official page for it. So, to keep up with everything happening, you'd probably just want to follow me on, wherever you are on social, on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook.
Here's a good segue. So I definitely want you to let them know how they can find you online.
Okay. Musically, of course, the main thing, you can find Cassandra Kubinski on Spotify and on iTunes and on Pandora. If you'd like to make a Cassandra Kubinski channel, they'll play you things that sound like me. And on socials, I am at Cassandra Kubinski on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm at Cassandra Cub, K-U-B, on Twitter.
Perfect. I was going to have you spell your name, but now you don't have to because it's Kubinski. So
yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been so fantastic. I really appreciate all your insights in your years in the music business and just how you've broken through those boundaries, right?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Bree. What you're offering here with this summit is just incredible. I mean, the access is just unbelievable. So it's such an honor to be a part of it. And I'm really looking forward to, connecting with your fans and with this community.
Absolutely. Now go out and make great music, connect with your fans, and grow your business. Female Entrepreneur Musician has been brought to you by FEMusician.com and FemaleMusicianAcademy.com. With editing by Jen Eads of 317 Sound Design and music by Stella Ronson.